All right, let's jump right into it. Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we are taking a massive historical sweep through American mass entertainment. We're looking at the century between the 1830s and the 1930s. And we're going to explore exactly how the relentless pursuit of the almighty dollar completely transformed how everyday people spend their free time. Listen to this. Back in 1908, entertainment entrepreneur Frederick Thompson let slip the ultimate industry secret. He said, "One is decency, the absolutely necessary quality in every line of the world's business. There is nothing that pays so well." And honestly, that quote hits right at the heart of our entire story today, this relentless pursuit of profit through the manufacturing of respectability. Here is our roadmap for today. We'll be looking at the birth of mass amusement, the pursuit of respectability, the rise of the Nickelodeons, a growing demand for excitement, the recorded music revolution, and finally, the radio broadcasting boom. Let's get going. Okay, part 1, the birth of mass amusement, moving from the Industrial Revolution to the stage. Picture the booming, frankly grueling industrial cities of the 1830s. A really stark cultural divide started to emerge. On one hand, you had legitimate theater, which catered to the elite with very respectable European masterworks. But on the other hand, you had the concert saloons. These places were rowdy. They demanded cheap variety shows, poured plenty of alcohol, and employed waiter girls to serve exhausted factory workers who were just absolutely desperate for a release. Now, out of this rough-hewn environment came blackface minstrelsy. Looking at the history objectively, this was actually antebellum America's most popular commercial entertainment. It featured incredibly rowdy, syncopated music, but it relied on performers wearing burnt cork to portray deeply offensive, stereotyped African-American characters. Despite those deeply racist roots, it spread like wildfire, with a popularity that was honestly comparable to early rock and roll. The minstrel stage was completely dominated by two primary, entirely inaccurate archetypes. First, you had Jim Crow, falsely depicted as a rural, docile, and happy slave. And right opposite him was Zip Coon, mocked as an urban, overdressed, and foolish freeman. White audiences falsely assumed these comic fools authentically represented African Americans. And that shaped Northern attitudes for generations. Moving right along to part 2, the pursuit of respectability, or, as I like to think of it, cleaning up for profit. 42 million. Think about that number for a second. That is the number of tickets P.T. Barnum sold to his American Museum between 1841 and 1868. To put that into perspective, the entire U.S. population at the time was only 35 million. So how'd he do it? Barnum realized that those concert saloons excluded women and children. So by banning liquor and creating a quote-unquote safe oddity museum, he unlocked this massive, previously untapped audience. Morality literally equal profit. So Barnum's incredibly inclusive approach basically sets the stage for vaudeville. This was a modular theatrical genre made up of diverse, totally cleaned up variety acts. They essentially took that rowdy saloon entertainment, scrubbed it clean, and aimed it right at middle-class families. The pitch was brilliant. If you don't like an act, just hang tight for 5 minutes and something completely different will come on. But to protect those family-friendly profits, these theater muggles laid down the law. Seriously, they enforced rigid rules of decency. Gentlemen had to take off their caps. There was absolutely no smoking, no whistling, and definitely no spitting on the floor. And the performers? They faced instant discharge for using vulgar words like liar, slob, or damn. Talk about a corporate cleanup, right? All designed to maximize those ticket sales.
That brings us to part 3, the rise of the Nickelodeons and the cinema of attractions.
The leap in visual technology here is just wild. Look at this. In 1892, we've got Edison's solitary kinetograph viewing machine. Just 3 years later, people figure out how to project moving pictures. By 1896, those projections are debuting in vaudeville shows. And by 1904, storefront Nickelodeons are popping up everywhere. Moving pictures went from a solitary peep show to a shared, crowded theatrical experience in a little over a decade. Now, you might be picturing a quiet, modern movie theater, but these early 5-cent shows were lively, chaotic community hubs. A classic program mixed short moving pictures with cheap live vaudeville acts, and it usually ended with the entire audience belting out songs together while following a brightly colored chorus slide. For new working-class immigrants, these places were absolutely crucial spaces to socialize and, believe it or not, even learn English just by singing along. But, history has a funny way of repeating itself. To reel in those lucrative middle-class dollars, exhibitors started pushing out the cheap live acts. They upgraded to plush velvet seats, put in better ventilation, and eventually moved operations out west to build the highly respectable Hollywood studio system we all know today.
Which brings us to part 4, a demand for excitement. We're talking youth, dance halls, and ragtime.
Listen to how social reformer Jane Addams totally nailed this cultural tension back in 1909. Their very demand for excitement is a protest against the dullness of life. Young industrial workers who were just completely exhausted by monotonous 12-hour factory shifts didn't want polite vaudeville. No way. They desperately wanted massive sensory release. Stuff like the thrill of Coney Island and the physical close-quarters contact of wild, crowded dance halls. To fuel this absolute dance craze, the music industry had to step it up. Enter Tin Pan Alley. This was a New York City neighborhood that basically became a hit factory. They appropriated the complex, irresistible rhythms of African-American ragtime to mass-produce standardized popular sheet music. It was a wildly successful commercial enterprise, and it honestly changed American pop music forever. All right, part 5, the recorded music revolution. Phonographs, blues, and hillbilly music. Check out this massive jump. In 1909, they were churning out about 350,000 phonographs a year, but by 1920, a staggering 2.5 million. This represents a fundamental shift in American culture. We're moving from actively playing sheet music around a family piano to passively listening to records. Fun fact, the standard 3-minute pop song was essentially invented back then just to fit the physical limitations of those early records. And this new tech actually led to a massive accidental discovery. Record executives venturing into the South stumbled into 2 huge, completely untapped demographics. First, they found race records, the blues, targeting urban Black Americans with incredible artists like Bessie Smith. Second, hillbilly, or country music, aimed at rural Southern whites with pioneers like the Carter family. Suddenly, the industry realized that regional sounds equaled massive commercial demand. And for our final act, part 6, the radio broadcasting boom, entertainment in every home. Radio's evolution is packed into 3 really dense decades. From Hertz discovering radio waves back in 1887, all the way to Fessenden's very first voice transmission in 1900. But the real game changer for regular folks happened in 1920, when KDKA broadcasted live election returns. Suddenly, boom, instantaneous, free entertainment and news were being beamed directly through the air and right into millions of living rooms. But here's the catch, and it's a big one. Look at the content of radio's biggest early hit. A show called Amos and Andy reached an unbelievable 40 million listeners. And how did they do it? By directly recycling those exact same 19th century minstrel stereotypes into this brand new broadcast medium. Using those same Jim Crow and Zip Coon archetypes we talked about earlier, this massively popular show proved that modern technology was still carrying the racist ghost of the 1830s all the way into the 1930s. So, as we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with a question to chew on. How do these founding dynamics, the clash of social classes, the intense desire for raw excitement, and the total sanitization of culture for pure commercial profit, how do they continue to dictate your digital feeds today? Think about it. How does this century-old tension shape the media you are streaming right now? Thanks so much for joining me on this deep dive.